Netflix's Chief Content Officer, Bela Bajaria, shares some surprising insights into the streaming service's approach to movies. Netflix is now the world leader when it comes to streaming, boasting over 300 million subscribers. The company regularly releases new movies, most recently Back in Action, and these movies often feature massive, blockbuster-sized budgets and major stars. The company's actual strategy when it comes to film, however, including the decision to not give movies substantial time in theaters, remains somewhat perplexing. Bajaria now sits down with Matthew Belloni from Puck for his podcast, The Town, shedding light on Netflix's approach to movies. The interview covers specific projects, like Greta Gerwig's Narnia movie, but Bajaria also speaks more broadly about the company's relationship to film, explaining why Netflix operates so differently from traditional movie studios and its streaming competitors. The question of why Netflix has such an aversion to theatrically releasing movies is a major point of conversation, with Bajaria disagreeing that the company's decision to give Gerwig's Narnia a 4-week window of theatrical exclusivity marks a shift in strategy. Belloni then asks whether a filmmaker like Guillermo del Toro, who has Frankenstein coming out later this year on Netflix, will be given the same treatment, a question that Bajaria mostly sidesteps Netflix's bespoke approach to theatrically releasing movies. Explained. The streamer does put some movies in theaters, but there's a catch. Netflix does have a history of releasing select films theatrically, usually with the intention of allowing these films to compete in awards shows like the Oscars. In order for a movie to qualify at the Oscars, it must play in theaters in 6 select metropolitan areas for 7 consecutive days. When Netflix gives one of its films a qualifying theatrical run, however, it's usually the bare minimum, and it's usually not highly promoted. One of the most recent notable examples of this is Glass One, a Knives Out mystery, 2022. The film marked, at the time, Netflix's biggest theatrical release ever, grossing $15 million in 1 week in theaters before it landed on Netflix. The decision to give the movie only 1 week was heavily criticized, as the film earned strong reviews and seemed to have the potential to earn far more due to its crowd-pleasing nature. "It saddens me," star Daniel Craig recently told The New Yorker about the film's lack of theatrical support, Netflix movie releases and cultural impact. Bela Bajaria makes a bold claim about Oppenheimer. Cillian Murphy as J. Robert Oppenheimer looks broken during his hearing in Oppenheimer. The conversation between Belloni and Bajaria eventually turns to the idea of cultural relevance and the creation of lasting IP, and whether a movie makes as big of a cultural footprint when it goes straight to streaming. Bajaria makes the case that Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, a movie that grossed $975 million at the box office in 2023 as part of the Barbenheimer phenomenon, would have been just as big of a sensation had it been a Netflix movie. Belloni pushes back against Bajaria's stance here, pointing out that half of Netflix's top 10 movies recently were Warner Brothers films that got theatrical releases with massive marketing campaigns. These theatrical releases, he argues, gave those movies a boost on streaming and sometimes led to the creation of franchises. Netflix's Carry On, Belloni states, was a viewership hit, but it probably isn't starting a franchise. Netflix lacks any strong franchises, and the company's refusal to embrace theatrical is seen as one reason for this. Bajaria, however, doesn't see it that way. After Bajaria points out that Netflix invests $18 billion in new movies and TV shows, Belloni points out that one common complaint about Netflix movies is their quality. Netflix makes such vast quantities of content that it can't possibly ensure a high bar for quality for all of it, the argument goes. Bajaria, though, doesn't think the company has any problems with quality. What Bajaria's cultural relevance claims mean for Netflix. The company's strategy appears to be working. John Hartley, Dwayne Johnson, pointing at something in the jungle in Red Notice. A key problem with discussing cultural impact is how that is actually quantified. Box office is the traditional way of quantifying a movie's success, and on streaming that's viewership. It's hard to believe that Oppenheimer would have made as big of a mark culturally had it had a 2-week IMAX run before landing on Netflix. The Nolan film, for example, was still selling out 70mm IMAX screens more than a month into its run. The film dominated the cultural conversation for months, and no Netflix movie has really accomplished that, no matter how high the viewership is. Clearly, though, Netflix's approach is working. Netflix is winning the streaming wars by a significant margin, with subscriber numbers still climbing. It seems like Belloni certainly has a point, though, that Netflix movies just seem to come and go with little fanfare even when they are, like Red Notice, watched by 230.9 million people. The streamer's top 5 films, as seen in the chart above, don't seem to be cultural touchstones like Oppenheimer. Our take on Bajaria's Netflix interview. Rejecting theatrical is a missed opportunity. Chris Hemsworth as Tyler Rake in Extraction 2. Even though Netflix's approach to movies is clearly working in terms of drawing subscribers and earning revenue, it can be frustrating from a viewer point of view. Some titles just seem like obvious movies to put in theaters due to their budgets and scope, or the talent involved. Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, 2019, David Fincher's The Killer, 2023, and the two Extraction movies starring Chris Hemsworth all feel like they would have been interesting to see on the big screen, and they could have become box office hits. It will be interesting to see what happens with Gerwig's Narnia movie. If it's a major success, it's possible more movies will get this treatment in the future. Whether it spurs any meaningful change in Netflix's movie strategy, however, seems unlikely.